What is going on? It is 12 noon on Wednesday, which means it's time for this week's episode of Ask the Instructor. My name is John Carissimo. The show is brought to you by the Tampa School of Real Estate. And what we're talking about today is estimating the value of an investment property. All the different approaches, because when you're considering investing in real estate, there's a lot of factors to weigh in on. There's a lot of numbers that you could run that'll help give you confidence as to whether or not this is a good deal or a bad deal. And that's not the same criteria for every investor. What also kind of depends on is what you're trying to do with this property and what the different exit strategies might be with it. And that's going to depend on what method you're going to be using to figure out the value of the property. Now, do you need a real estate license to be an investor? The answer is absolutely not. You could buy real estate without having a real estate license, but having a real estate license can increase your return on investment anywhere from maybe as low as 2% and maybe as high as 6 or 7%, maybe even more factoring in the knowledge piece of that, but a direct contribution. We're going to talk about how you could use commissions towards your down payment and how you could use that piece to squeeze out usually another 3%, maybe just 2%. But that's huge when you're dealing with a $100,000 investment or a $200,000 investment or a $500,000 investment. It only gets bigger as the value gets larger. So having that real estate license not only gives you a ton of knowledge and a way to increase your return on investment, but it also gives you the ability to start learning about investment through the eyes of others, to see other people invest. Study what it is that they're doing, understand better what it is that they're doing because you understand real estate, and then be able to apply some of those concepts. So that's what we're talking about today. And this is all stuff, these are all topics from your pre-licensing course in the appraisal chapter. It might not go as in depth as we're going to go today on this week's episode of Ask the Instructor and really tying this together, because today I want to make this about helping you understand better how to figure out if a property is a good investment, whether that's an investment for you or that's an investment for your client. Every real estate buyer you work with, as well as every seller, is an investor, because no one wants to lose money, and that's the number one rule of investing: don't lose money. So let's get into today's episode of Ask the Instructor. We're going to learn how to estimate the value of real estate so we don't break that golden rule of losing money.
You are watching Ask the Instructor. Absorb the knowledge. Become the expert.
Hey, welcome back to this week's episode of Ask the Instructor. My name is John Carissimo, and today we're talking about understanding how to estimate the value of an investment property. And this is a valuable skill whether you're looking to invest in real estate yourself or you're looking to help other people invest in real estate. And even if this is somebody buying real estate as their home, where they're just really speculating that the value will increase over time, which it almost always does with real estate. Over a long enough period of time, real estate pretty much always goes up in value. It's just really, you have to look at a long enough time span to see that increase in value. So even a home buyer buying a property that they want to live in, they're hoping in 3 to 5 years their property is going to be worth more and they can maybe sell it for more and maybe get something bigger, maybe build some equity, maybe get something a little bit nicer. So when we talk about investing, real estate investing is really this big umbrella term that applies to basically any way you're trying to make money off of real estate. So I would say that that's what investing is. When we define investing, it's okay, we're trying to use real estate to make money. And that's really already kind of what you're doing as a real estate professional. Now, granted, it's because we have a real estate license and we're assisting others, so it's more of a service that they're paying for. But really, you investing in the knowledge to learn about real estate, that allows you to provide value to people who need that information, people that need to understand real estate better. If you could help them understand real estate better, you create value to them. And so that's how you can invest in yourself to learn real estate more and keep cycling this into each other, bettering yourself and also bettering your knowledge that you have of real estate so you're able to also better serve your clients. And then also eventually better serve yourself, because one of the things with investing, now, I'm not going to say it's impossible to invest in real estate with no money money down, because it is possible, but it is a lot more difficult to invest in real estate with no money down compared to when you do have capital available to invest in real estate. Because when you have funds to put towards real estate, that opens up the potential of what you could actually purchase as opposed to trying to find a no money down option. So it's extremely difficult to start in real estate using the no money down option. It takes a lot longer. It requires a lot more knowledge and skill, which when you're a new investor, you might not have all that information. Now, enter working in real estate, having a real estate license. So we get a lot of people that come to Tampa School of Real Estate to get their real estate license, not because they want to be a real estate licensee, but maybe because they see that as a stepping stone on their path to becoming a real estate investor. So getting a real estate license, you learn about all kinds of different topics of real estate, and including what we're going to be getting into today of estimating the value of real estate. And this just allows you to study real estate at a deeper level. Now, there's all kinds of investing courses and things like that are out there. But another reason why I would recommend you get the real estate license is so that you understand the laws. Because if you're banking on the theory that you could just play dumb and you could say that something you didn't know something was against the law, maybe that lessens the penalty against you, but you're ultimately probably still going to be penalized by whatever court of law is enforcing whatever rule or law it is that you're breaking. So in the real estate pre-licensing course, you learn about all these laws and rules. You learn about the things you can and can't do. You're going to learn that it's not illegal to have a real estate license and be an investor in real estate. I don't know where people get this crazy idea from, but we've had a lot of people call us and say, hey, I heard that if I want to invest in real estate, I shouldn't get my real estate license. Absolutely not. You should get your real estate license because you're going to become more knowledgeable. Now, yes, you do take on some professional liability, but you know how to manage that liability because you are now a professional as opposed to an amateur investor. So getting a real estate license can really benefit you, and that's why we're talking about this today. Because as we currently have here, we have some episodes on state of real estate and Ask the Instructor about investing in real estate. You learn about it in our licensing courses a little bit, but we're not here to sell you any courses on real estate investing. I'm just showing you what you're going to learn about being a real estate professional investing. So let's go ahead and talk about how we could estimate the value. So the first thing you've got to do is define your goal or objective. What is it that you want to do with this piece of real estate? And this basically usually refers to, a lot of times they call this an exit. Now, sometimes that exit might be to keep the property. So let's go over a couple of these options. So these are usually the main options that you have to invest in real estate. You have the one you see on TV all the time. This is the one that's all over HGTV. And that's fix and flip, where you find a property that is run down, that's wore out, that's been depreciated, that needs some love, that needs some TLC, that really just needs new stuff. It needs to basically be rebuilt, but you're able to rebuild this real estate for a lower price than building a brand new house because you're able to leverage what's already there and just replace what needs to be replaced. And usually you could do this if you buy low enough to where you've got enough room to be able to cover your expenses as well as maybe some unexpected surprises and still be able to make a profit. Now, if you're doing this, this is probably the most important type of investing in real estate to have a real estate license for, because with the fix and flip, you're going to be doing two sales, two settlements, two closings within a relatively short period of time. When you're buying the real estate and then when you're turning around and selling the real estate 60, 90, 120 days later, however long it may be. And if you have a real estate license, you could earn commission on both of those sales. On the sale to acquire the property as well as the sale to also sell the property. If you're doing this, fix it and flip it. Let's buy it for this, let's put some work in it, and then sell it for this, and we'll make some profit there. So that's what you see on the TV all the time, all the design stuff. It's exciting stuff because, I mean, everybody likes to design a home, and yeah, there's a little bit of a degree of skill with that, but none of that matters if you don't get a good deal. That's why it's important to understand these numbers and to be able to estimate the value, because if you miscalculate how much you should be buying it for or how much you could sell it for, that could turn in from you making tons of money to you losing tons of money very quickly. So that's what I'm saying about running these numbers and being able to do these calculations. This is going to help give you confidence in whether or not this deal will work or will not work. That's what the number is going to tell you. The more you run the numbers, it's going to point you in one or the other direction. More the direction that, yes, this is a good deal, the numbers are backing this up, that's a good deal. And you might love the idea of a property, but then you start running the numbers and you're realizing, okay, well, yeah, I do love this property. It looks really nice. Maybe you'd even love to live there. Look, most of the time, great investment properties are not the properties that you want to live in. They're properties where you see opportunity. You might be accustomed to some luxurious lifestyle. But then at the same time, the price points, as you get higher in price points, like there's one of these house flipping shows. I'll admit, I'll watch some of these house flipping shows sometimes. Sometimes to see, okay, how accurate it is, and other times just to be entertained by reality TV, I'll admit it. But one of the ones that really stands out, and I watched it more so for the novelty, was the Vanilla Ice house flipping show. I didn't even know if that was on HGTV or something like that. But he'd go buy these $500,000, $700,000 houses, dump a bunch of money in them. Now, that strategy, he might be able to make that work, but let me show you a comparison with that compared to, let's say, a $100,000 house. Think of all the people you know that might be able to afford a $100,000 house. Now think of all the people you might know that could afford a $1 million house. Now which list is larger? Now if you I don't mean personal acquaintances, but just everyone it is that you meet, people that you interact with on a daily basis, think of what value home it is they can afford, and ultimately, if you look at a large enough sample, you're going to realize there's way more people that can afford a $100,000 house, because even that person buying the $1 million house can afford the $100,000 house as an investment. So there's a lot stronger demand in lower price, lower value properties. So this is again separating the consumer side from the investment side. As you start to look at real estate more as an investment, the things that matter to consumers start to become less important unless, let's say, you are maybe doing one of these fix and flip things, because if you do plan on reselling the property. So in the description for this, we talked about a bunch of the different approaches to calculating value. The income capitalization approach we're going to be talking about, but you usually wouldn't factor that in primarily as the first thing for a fix and flip. Usually what you're looking at with this is going to be sales comparison. Because with the sales comparison approach, you're looking at what properties are selling for. And you're looking, can I buy it below? And can I sell it above, or really at the market value? Because when you try to sell above the market value, it only takes longer. You're decreasing your chances of selling. So you're really trying to sell below the market value. And I wouldn't even say above. I mean, if you get above, great, but really pricing it at the market value. And why I want to make that correction is because a lot of new investors will go into this thinking, okay, if I put enough money into this property, it'll sell for way more. So in your real estate course, in pre-licensing, so you get a real estate license. This is going to be one of the first things you learn. Not right away in the course. It's not until like 3/4 of the way into the course you get into the appraisal section. But you learn about the sales comparison approach, and you also learn about some of the principles that limit these approaches to value. And one of those principles that limit to where you don't want to try to shoot for above the market value. You really just want to shoot for, okay, if I bring it up to market value, can I still make it a profit? Because there's a concept called regression. And regression says, let's say you take a house, and let's say you buy the house for $100,000. That's how much it costs you, $100,000 you get invested into the property for. The average price in the neighborhood is $125,000. Let's say you look at pricing, and when I say average, that's a very generalized, easy number here. You might look at price per square foot. There's a lot of ways you could use these same concepts to look at data differently. But if we're buying it for 100 and the average is 125, we better make sure that all of our costs are going to be less than $25,000, so we've still got some money to make here. Because if you look at this and you're trying to make sense of this, and this is again how the number is going to push you in one direction or the other. The numbers are going to either help you understand that, okay, the numbers are showing that this could be a good investment, or the numbers are showing this might not be a good investment. Because if you start running numbers on how much it's going to be maybe to put some repairs into this property, and let's say, okay, we're probably going to need $40,000 for repairs. So if you buy for 100 and your overall cost, let's say for repairs and closing cost and and all the other fees that are going to be associated with the sale. If you don't have a real estate license, your commission expense is probably going to be higher than if you did have a real estate license, where you could leverage that professional license to be able to lower your cost. So maybe that cost is even higher than that. But let's say that was your plan, to put $40,000 in and your cost was at $100,000. Well, that means you've sunk $140,000 into the property, which an amateur investor would try to make sense of this and say, well, if I could just sell it for $150,000, if I could just sell it for $150,000, then I'll still make $10,000. But now what you're trying to do, if you're trying to sell for $150,000, that's way above the average. The farther you get above the average price point of the neighborhood, the less likely someone is going to want to buy that house. You never want to have the nicest house in the neighborhood. The nicest house in the neighborhood represents probably above the ceiling. Like the second or third nicest house in the neighborhood is probably the most you should ever spend on a property, but you're limiting the amount of appreciation. So the fix and flip strategy for fixing up real estate and turning around and flipping it, it's all about forcing appreciation. You're forcing appreciation of the property. Now the question is, can you force $50,000 of appreciation? That's what this plan that we've just been walking through here would be contingent upon. For us even just to make $10,000 here, we would have to force $50,000 of appreciation. So at this price point, this wouldn't make sense. Now, if that average price point were closer to $150,000, we're dealing more in reality now. Or had we been able to buy the property for less than $100,000, we're dealing more in reality now. Because now we could sell more for that average price point and still have room to make our repairs and cover our costs and be able to make some money doing that. But again, with the fix and flip, what's really important, and a lot of these other approaches don't matter as much unless you start factoring in the idea of rentals, which is what I'm going to talk about next, because even with fix and flip, you might want to be able to understand what a landlord would be able to rent this out as, because sometimes you might be flipping it just to be a rental property. Maybe you're studying the properties in the neighborhood, and maybe it's a community of a lot of renters. We're at the peak right now of percentage of renters. Maybe it's going to go even higher. Who knows? Compared across history, though, this is the highest percentage of renters ever in the United States history. So there's tons of people renting, and there's a lot of neighborhoods of renters. And so if you're buying a property in one of these neighborhoods of renters, you might want to scale back the fix a little bit. Because if you're fixing it up for resale value for somebody to buy it as their home, they might appreciate some nicer touches. Maybe not at a $150,000 price point. That's definitely still going to be, at least in the Tampa market, definitely still a budget property with more economical fixtures and more economical finishes in it. But as you get into higher price points, that's where a buyer would pay more to have some of these nicer fixtures. So it's a lot of factors of understanding who ultimately is going to buy this property, what they would pay for it, and what they expect for what they're paying for. Those are really the questions it is that you've got to ask. And then you've got to make sense with the numbers. You've got to be able to figure it out to where the numbers make sense on this. And you run the numbers, you crunch the numbers until it makes sense. Otherwise, you don't do the deal. The numbers don't lie to you. You use those to substantiate whether or not this is a good investment. You might have a feeling that a property is a good investment, but it's not a good investment until you validate that by running these numbers and figuring out, can you make this a good investment? Is that opportunity that I think is here, is that really there? So that's the fix and flip strategy. So that's another one. Now, the next strategy I want to talk about is the buy and hold strategy. And these are really the two main primary competing concepts in investing in real estate for traditional real estate investing. Is either you're buying property, you're going to buy it below market value, fix it up and flip it at market value, and you're using primarily the sales comparison approach to look at other properties that have sold. And for this sales comparison approach, if you want to get further breakdown on that, we've got a ton of videos on YouTube, as well as our Success Center. The easiest place to find them is probably our Success Center, tampaschool.com/success. If you search for value, appraising, investment, all those keywords like that, you'll find a ton of videos on there diving deeper into these strategies to figure out how to understand the sales comparison approach. But that's sort of, just to put it in a nutshell briefly, it's where you're looking at property sales to determine what the property could sell for after you make some adjustments to make the property seem like they're identical feature-wise. So that's the sales comparison approach. Now with the buy and hold strategy, there's really two subcomponents of this buy and hold strategy. So the idea with the buy and hold strategy, and even if you're doing fix and flip, you should understand the buy and hold strategy because you might be flipping the property to a buy and hold investor. So that might be your end buyer. If you're not going to buy and hold it, maybe if you're flipping it, the person that is going to buy it is going to buy it to hold it, to buy it to be able to rent it out long term, or maybe also short term. So that's kind of the new thing that's popped up recently. So since the beginning of time, there's always been long-term rental. And long-term rentals, that's usually where you're doing like a 1-year lease or some version of that, some variation of that, where you've got a rent that usually makes you a little bit of money on top of your cost, your financing expenses, taxes, insurance, and everything like that, and you get a nice little bit of cash flow. The fix and flip is more about the big payday. Buy and hold is more about the cash flow. Now, long-term rental, this is more stable. This is more stable. This is more like when you think of an investment, so a lot of people when they think of investing, they think of, oh, I just go put my money somewhere and it pays me money. And in a perfect world, that's a great investment. That you just go stick your money somewhere and it pays you back money. And you don't have to do anything. That would be really true, perfect, pure investing. But there's not really any pure investing out there unless you're just giving your money to somebody else. And if you are, you're maybe making a very small return, if any. So investing in real estate, especially when you're the one controlling all these different factors, you're the one doing the due diligence, you're the one doing the research, you're the one putting these pieces together, you have the potential to make a lot higher returns. And that's with either of these strategies. But if you want to basically cash out and get a bigger payday, that's usually through the fix and flip, whereas buy and hold is where you're usually looking more for cash flow over the long term. Now, there is a way to cash out of the property of a little bit through a refinance, which we'll talk about in a moment here. But I want to talk about another category that over the past few years has really exploded into a huge market, and that's short-term rentals. Now, what do I mean when I say a short-term rental? Basically Airbnb, Vrbo, Flipkey, all these little websites that are out there for really almost an alternative to a hotel. And this is like the Uber of housing, the Uber of real estate, where rather than you going to a hotel, you could go rent an entire house directly from the owner of the house. Or maybe through a property management company. There's a lot of ways to do this. But this is maybe where it's just a couple of days or a week or something like that. A much shorter stay as opposed to a 1-year commitment typically with your long-term rental. Now the benefit, the flip side on the short-term rental, there's really a big benefit and there's also a big cost to it as well. The big benefit is higher ROI. So you're able to get more money typically. At least, and I don't know, maybe because we're in Tampa and we're in Florida, and if you're in Tampa or you're in Florida, or really you're in any area in Florida that's popular for tourism, which is most of Florida, the short-term rental might be a really strong option for you. Now, I'm not here to tell you on this video that, hey, these are the only ways to invest in real estate. These are the only strategies that work, or this is the one single way to invest in real estate. I'm here to provide you these different options because depending on your market, depending on your level of experience, depending on the funding that you have available, will limit what you could do to actually invest in real estate and what actually might make something a good deal. One of the things you'll learn in the real estate course is investment value is based on the investor. Because it's based on what is that investor's goal. Because the way we look at a property for figuring out value is going to depend a lot on whether we're just trying to turn it around quickly and resell it, to whether we're looking to rent it for the long term or whether we're renting it for the short term. Now, the short-term rental, you could usually get a higher ROI, or at least that's a possibility. I would say anywhere in the country, it's probably a possibility for a higher ROI, but just double check that, because if you're in an area that isn't very touristy, that there's not a lot of tourism, that might be where this is closer to a long-term rental, and maybe that doesn't make sense because the cost, the drag on the short-term rental concept is that it is more work. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, but this is more of a business as opposed to a more true investment. Investments are going to be closer, not truly set and forget, but closer to that idea of set and forget. Whereas a business, that takes more time, that takes more attention, that takes more of your focus, that takes more of your energy, and a short-term rental will do that because you've got a lot more turnaround. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't build it into a huge business and make it super profitable, because you absolutely can. There's a much higher potential for a stronger return on investment if you're good at what you do here. And that's true for any one of these here. Any one of these options, you can lose money if you don't know what you're doing. You could lose money if you don't run the numbers. You could lose money if you do not run the numbers and you don't run them accurately. So what I want to get into next year is we'll throw a sample property up here. We'll throw some numbers up here and some of the things it is you could look at and figure out, okay, because when you look at a property, you shouldn't just be looking at for one option. You should say, does this make more sense as a fix and flip? Does this make more sense as buy and hold? Does this make more sense for a short-term or longer-term rental? And even if you don't do one of these three, maybe you don't flip properties, or maybe you don't do short-term rentals, maybe you're all just on long-term rentals, but still run those numbers, because you'll be able to see, okay, this property is better suited for a short-term rental. Yeah, I maybe could still make a little money here, but this is definitely better for a short-term rental. And you either decide that you want to do short-term rentals or you pass on the deal. That's what makes you a good investor, is how much you're really willing to say no to. Now, you got to say yes every now and then, because if you just say no all the time, you're not going to invest in anything. But you have to be able to be willing to turn things down when you're not 100% confident. And you have to always know that there's going to be more deals out there. There's going to be more properties out there. And when the numbers don't make sense, that's an extreme red flag. Yes, you maybe could still make it into a profitable investment. I don't want to say that you can't, but when the numbers aren't working out, or when the margins are really tight, that's a red flag that, hey, only do this as a worst case scenario, because the numbers don't look like it's going to work. And if the numbers don't look like it's going to work, I would recommend not to do it. So these numbers are here to help you. The better you understand them, the more it is you're able to work with them, the better you're able to become a great investor that doesn't lose money. So we're going to run through some examples of this, but stick with us. I'm John Charisma. You're watching Ask the Instructor.
The most powerful tool to study for your real estate exam is the Question Simulator from Tampa School of Real Estate. We've used our years of experience in preparing students for the Florida real estate exam to bring you the most powerful exam study tool available. In the Question Simulator, you'll be able to go directly to a particular unit so you can focus on the sections where you need the most practice. We have also included the percentages of each unit so you know which units are the most important for your real estate exam. Every question will immediately give you detailed feedback, which is almost always more important than the question or the answer themselves. After completing all the questions in a particular unit, you can go through question by question and review any that you've gotten wrong. You could also print out a report at the end of each quiz. The Question Simulator from Tampa School of Real Estate is 100% mobile compatible, so you can practice with test questions anywhere you have your phone with you. Enroll now at questionsimulator.com and get ready to pass your exam.
Hey, welcome back to this week's episode of Ask the Instructor. I'm John Charisma. The show is brought to you by the Tampa School of Real Estate. We're here every Wednesday, 12 noon Eastern Time, helping you understand the technical side of the real estate industry. And so what we're doing today is talking about understanding how to come up with the value of investment properties. Now, we've been talking about this fix and flip thing. So we already kind of ran through some numbers on the fix and flipped. Again, you want to shoot for selling the property at the market value, the average price for that neighborhood. If you start reaching too far above that, you're going to get pulled down by the surrounding property. So you want to blend in with your surroundings. The opportunity exists in the fix and flip when you find a property that's subpar, when a property is below the neighborhood standards and you're going to bring it up to the neighborhood standards. If you try to bring a property above the neighborhood standards, that a lot of times can be a big mistake with fix and flip, because a lot of times you're left with a property that you can't get sold because the people that can afford that property don't want to live in that neighborhood because it's surrounded by lower priced, lower value properties. So you want to look for the opportunity for properties that are below the market value, below the value in that neighborhood. And that's usually the case anytime you're buying real estate, that you want to buy below the market value. Because if you buy below the market value, you've already got equity in the property as soon as you own it. Even if you bought a property with 100% financing, so if you're a veteran or you're an active duty military member, you're eligible for a VA loan. If your spouse is active duty military or a veteran, you're eligible for a VA loan as well. And you could potentially have 2 VA loans up to a certain point. There's a whole bunch of criteria for that, but that's one of the things you also learn about in your real estate course is VA loans. Because that creates a great opportunity for veterans to become real estate investors, even if it means just investing in their own roof over their head. Because if they could do that thing again to buy below the market value and maybe be willing to put a little bit of work into it to maybe force some appreciation in the property, then even a consumer can be a fix and flip investor to a certain extent. And that's really what your buyers are, because they're probably going to do something to the property to make it nicer, and they're going to sell it eventually. Maybe not over the course of a couple of months, but they'll flip it in like 5 years, 7 years, according to National Association of Realtor average statistics. But now on the buy and hold side, again, the primary objective typically is cash flow. So let's take that same $100,000 property. That same $100,000 property. That's our cost to get into this property. Now again, let's say that you look at the area and you determine that the average in the neighborhood is $125,000. And you're investing $40,000. For repairs, for closing costs, for all the money, the extra money you have to put in on the property on top of the cost. That's what that $40,000 represents there. Now, out of that, we've got now $140,000 in on this property. So, even if we tried to sell it break even at this point, we're selling above the neighborhood average, which isn't too far above the neighborhood average, probably would still sell relatively quickly, maybe even more for that, but you're making it more difficult to sell this property the higher you go above the market average. So let's rethink this. We've run the numbers on the fix and flip here. This is the same numbers we just ran on that fix and flip earlier, and we say, okay, well, I'm not comfortable with this because this number is definitely a lot higher than this number here. And the farther these numbers get apart, the more that this gets away from the average in the neighborhood, the harder it's going to be for you to sell that property. So maybe you revisit this and you're like, okay, well, maybe I'm not going to do the fix and flip thing. And since I'm not going to flip it to an end consumer, I'm maybe going to think about the buy and hold strategy where the person buying this property isn't somebody buying it as their own real estate, but somebody renting it, paying for the right to use the property, and maybe we could scale back some of the finishes. Maybe instead of a $40,000 investment, maybe we could get that down to, I don't know, maybe even just a $20,000 investment, or maybe $25,000. Let's say $25,000. Let's say we're going to do that we're going to invest $25,000, so we know at the very least we're not going to exceed the neighborhood average. We're not going to exceed the $125,000 in the neighborhood. So even if we did sell for just the average price, at least we would break even if the $25,000 represented our cost. And the other thing you could factor in as well is if you're doing the buy and hold, and that's maybe how we trim that from $40,000 down to $15,000, you're going to have less closing expenses because you're not selling the property. You're buying the property, and you'll have some costs there typically, but since you're now not selling the property, you're renting the property, that helps take away some of those closing costs. And again, if maybe you could scale back some of those fixtures to maybe put it more at rental level as opposed to closer to a more luxury, more something for to appeal more to a home buyer type of level. So now again, we're at that break even point there. So worst case scenario, if we need to pull the plug on this, we could break even in theory. Or maybe we could sell it for a little bit more. Because now if we sell it for $130,000, or maybe $135,000 to cover some extra closing expenses, we could still make money there now at a lower price point than we were at before with $140,000 just to break even. Now we could break even at $125,000, so to say. And so what that'll also do is reduce how much it is that we've got invested in this property. And so this is where the income capitalization rate comes in. And this is another process that you learn in the pre-licensing course in that appraisal section, because this is the primary method that you want to use when you're trying to determine the value of an income producing property. So let's say that this property that we've got $125,000 invested in, and there's a lot of like general rules out there. One of those general rules is the 1% rule that says that, okay, if your property could rent for 1% of its value, that's a good sign. Not necessarily meaning it's a good investment, but that's a good indicator that you should keep looking, that you should keep doing your due diligence. Okay, that one checks out. Let's look at a little bit more real number as opposed to just this quick, easy 1%. So let's figure that though. Let's figure, okay, market rent $1,250. Can we rent this property for $1,250? And what you would do at this point is kind of like the sales comparison approach, except for now, rather than looking at sales, you're looking at properties that are renting in the neighborhood and how much they're renting for, and figuring out how similar they are to what you're trying to do with that $25,000 to this property. And figuring out, is that feasible? Does that make sense to be at 1% of the what we have invested here, the $125,000? Could we realistically get $1,250 for this property? And if the answer is yes, then okay, keep doing it. That doesn't mean stop. That means keep looking, keep running the numbers, keep getting more confidence on this to keep figuring out, okay, is this still really a good investment? Now, running some numbers on this. So let's say we could rent this for $1,250 a month. So pull out our calculator over here, $1,250 a month times 12 months. We end up with $15,000 in rent. An annual. We have a name for this in the income approach. It's called potential gross income. Potential gross income. Because if this property is rented 100% of the time, the most you would have come in for it at $1,250 for the rent is $15,000. Now, we're going to have some cost and some expenses to this here. And income capitalization, one of the first things that you factor in and it's not really an expense or a cost, it's money that never comes in, and that's called vacancy and collection losses. So vacancy and collection losses, this is the percentage of time that your property is vacant or that you're not collecting rent. Which what you want to do to find this is the same way you validated that rent is you look at the market, you look at other rental properties for sale, and look at the vacancy and collection loss rate it is that they're having. And if you're having a hard time doing that, talk to a realtor that specializes in investing in that area. Or maybe find a property manager that handles property in that area that also knows the investment side of it and knows the buy side and sell side of it as well, that's familiar with these numbers here, that could give you a little bit more better accurate estimate of your vacancy and collection losses. We're just going to use 10% today just to keep the number simple. So let's say 10% of the time we don't get rent. So 10% of 15,000 is 1,500. So we're going to take that out, minus 1,500 in vacancy and collection losses. So that now leaves us with 13,500 in EGI, which stands for effective gross income. And again, this is called the income approach or the income capitalization approach. We also have more videos on this that go more in depth, that spend the whole episode of Ask the Instructor on the income approach. Just go to tampaschool.com/success and search for income. Search for income on tampaschool.com/success, and you'll find a bunch of videos we've done before on the income capitalization approach and other videos on valuing investment property. Because really today I'm just trying to tie in a bunch of these different topics together, as many as we can during the time we've got together today. So that's our effective gross income, $13,500. Now what does that number mean? Well, that number more so means this is how much we could actually expect to bring into the property. Now at $1,350, we're not at the end of the tunnel yet. We're not at the end of the funnel. We still have more to take out, because one thing we're not factoring in yet is our operating expenses. And your operating expenses are going to include things like you've got management fees. If you're not managing the property yourself, there's going to be property tax. There's going to be hazard insurance. Anything that's related to operation of the property. This could be lawn maintenance. This could be repairs to the property. This could be replacing an item in the property, maybe replacing an appliance, or maybe even just setting aside money for a replacement, that all factors into the operating expenses. And now, how much the operating expenses are for the property is another factor that you can somewhat control. So investing in real estate, again, it's less of an investment compared to other investments. When I think of an investment more of a hands-off investment, I think of maybe more so investing in a stock. But even then, you have to do your due diligence and your research to be able to understand if you think this stock is going to potentially go up in value or maybe go down in value if you're betting on the opposite with that. Whereas investing, you can control the outcome a little bit more. Now if you're the one calling the shots at Apple or Google, then yeah, definitely go buy the stock in that company because you control that company. But now with a real estate investment, you're in control of these things. If management fees are high, well, here's something you could do. You could use a sweat equity strategy and manage it yourself. Now you might say, well, John, that's not investing. Okay, yeah, so you've got to spend a little bit more time than you thought. But that's what real estate investing is. That's what any sort of investment is, where you've got to put the time in to do your due diligence, to maybe do a little work, especially when you could influence the outcome of this. You know, what if you're an investor at Apple and you got this great idea for the iPhone and you know for sure that your idea for the iPhone is going to skyrocket sales, cause double the sales, and Apple will be even more so the richest company in the world. But if you don't work at Apple, does your idea matter? Can your idea be implemented? Are they even going to listen to your idea? Do they even care about your idea? No. Whereas if you have a great idea for your investment property, you could take that idea and run with it. So if you're willing to maybe invest against some sweat equity, invest some of your own time in this, you might be able to eliminate that management fee. Now, ultimately, long term, you might want to bring that in so this is more scalable, because you managing the properties, that puts a limitation, a bottleneck on yourself. But maybe to get started, it's maybe not something you need right away. And then maybe even like the lawn maintenance and maybe even repairs. And this is where you hear people that have invested in real estate complain about, you know, the toilets, termites and tenants and all that type of stuff. It's where they're taking on these themselves. So these are typically not enjoyable things to do. That's why most investors do outsource these more manual labor and more active roles of this to make this more like a true investment where it is more hands-off. But when you're starting out, you might not have that luxury of having a lower rate of return. You might be trying to get the largest return it is you possibly can, and that's why running these numbers is so crucial and essential. So let's say that, and then we're just going to make up a random number here. Who knows if this would be even close to what you'd actually have here. But let's say we've got $3,500 in operating expenses between your taxes, between your insurance, now this doesn't include your mortgage expense. This does not include mortgage expense. If you're looking at operating expenses under the income approach, that doesn't include financing expenses, because financing expenses are considered a business expense. Your income taxes are considered a business expense. Anything that's not specific to that property is going to be a business expense. And even though if you think the mortgage payment might be specific to the property, it's not. It's specific to your business, that your business doesn't have the cash to invest, so your business needs to borrow that money. And so that's why they consider mortgages a business expense. And so it doesn't matter if you don't agree with that or not, but just know that that's typically not included, and it's not supposed to be included as an operating expense. So that's, again, not only knowing how to calculate these numbers, knowing what these numbers mean. Because when you know what the meaning of these numbers actually is, then you could start to have these ideas and figure out if these ideas are actually something that's going to contribute to the bottom line. And again, running these numbers to see if the numbers substantiate what it is that you're trying to do. But let's say that you've got like $3,500. Let's say that comes out to $3,500 a year. It's a small property, and maybe we're doing a bunch of this ourselves because that would be, I would say, a pretty low operating expense. But again, that's where you run these numbers, and you keep running these numbers as you start to get more data to make them more accurate. So that leaves us now, and we take that away, that $3,500. So when we take our $13,500 we had down here, that was our level of income before operating expenses, $13,500. So we take that away, and we're now at $10,000. $10,000, what we would call our net operating income. Our net operating income. Now, the net operating income, this is the income it is that you have coming in before any mortgage expense. So this is before you have your mortgage payment. Now, one thing to factor in here is typically a mortgage payment, a regular residential mortgage payment, is going to also have an escrow account for your property taxes and hazard insurance. But remember, we already factored those in the operating expenses here. So really, you're just going to be looking at the principal and interest portion of your payment. And let's say here that in this situation, because ultimately what you're doing is you're calculating this based off the amount of cash it is that you invest into this property, and what your return on investment is based on the amount of cash it is that you've invested, because you do have the ability to leverage yourself. So while we're on this right here, I'm just going to Google a quick mortgage calculator, because calculating the value of or the payment amount for a mortgage is a lot harder to do without one of these simple calculators. We could go through and talk about the math here, but we're going to need a whole hour just to cover how to calculate a mortgage payment. You don't need to do that. You just hop on the good old Google here. They've even got one right in here. Now, the thing it is that we want to remember here is that, again, we only want to do this based on the principal and interest, because we've already factored in property taxes and hazard insurance as part of our $3,500 here. And actually, with those two numbers, that even might be a little bit higher. And that's, again, the first time you run through these numbers, especially if you're just doing a more kind of just broad stroke approach to see, okay, let's just, have some rough numbers. That's what these are here. These are rough numbers. This is maybe us looking at a property and figuring, okay, well, this is what it might be, but of course we're going to do more due diligence and really validate these numbers before we actually do anything with this property here. So let's say we've got a $100,000 mortgage amount. We're going to do a $100,000 mortgage, assuming that we've invested $25,000 into this property here. $25,000 with a $125,000 investment on $100,000, that's an 80-20 loan to value, meaning that you're doing that $25,000 is a 20% down payment. Which there are other ways to do this where you get a lot more creative than having to produce a $25,000 down payment, or maybe you've sold some real estate. That's like 2.5, maybe 3 real estate commissions to be able to bank up $25,000 for an average price home in Hillsborough County at about a 3% commission rate. So with a real estate license, you have the ability, if you could get decent at selling real estate, to be able to build up some capital so you can become a real estate investor. And that's why this is such a great stepping stone if you're eventually trying to become a real estate investor. So let's put this in here, $100,000, 3.92% mortgage payment, interest rate, 30-year mortgage. Again, obviously, we'd put these in with the numbers here. But this is putting our payment at $473. Now, if we have $10,000 a month coming in, or not 10,000 a month, 10,000 a year. If we divide this by 12, 10,000 divided by 12 months means that we've got $833.33 coming in per month. Now, this was our NOI, which real estate exams, that's usually all it is that they care about. Now, in the real world, you're taking this one step further to figure out, okay, based on that NOI, that's $833.33 a month. Now we're looking at cash flow. Because if the only other expense we have to figure in, before our taxes, of course, but for this particular investment is the mortgage expense, and based on this calculation here, we've got a $473 mortgage payment. So at $833 of gross money, gross net operating income coming in, meaning before we take out our mortgage and other business expenses, but the net operations of the property is bringing in $833.33 a month, minus the $473.33. That brings us down to $360 of cash flow per month. Which, yeah, that's not exactly quit your job money at that point. Kind of hard to live on $360 a month or $4,300 a year. But what would you do if you got a $4,300 bonus this year? What would you do with that $4,300? Well, if you figure out how to make that $4,300, you might want to take that $4,300, turn it around and reinvest that and do another one of these properties here, because you don't get rich investing in real estate just owning one property. And that's the mistake a lot of homeowners make is, yes, they are an investor buying property with the hopes that it will appreciate in value. But as a real estate investor, it's really not so much an investment as it is really a business. Because if you look at professional real estate investors, they run it as a business. They're not like sitting back in a robe in an armchair, smoking a pipe, saying, oh, I'm going to buy this property here, and let's go ahead and get some people in there, do some stuff, and we'll collect some money. And even if it was that simple, you still have to do the research on those deals initially. And investing, this is again truly supposed to be the hands-off, hey, just take my money and make more of it. That's not real estate investing. Real estate investing requires your knowledge. Real estate investing requires your expertise. Real estate investing requires what you got up here to be able to work through all this, because the average person isn't going to understand everything it is that we've went through today. You might not fully be at this. If this is the first time you're seeing income capitalization, your head might be spinning right now with all the data it is that we've just dumped on you here. But it's always going to feel overwhelming at first, and it's good to feel overwhelmed, because when you're overwhelmed, it means you're pushing yourself to your capacity. It's pushing yourself to what you truly can do. So if you don't feel overwhelmed, you're leaving something on the table. You've got more that you could be doing that you're leaving there. So if you feel like this is something that you're interested in, that you like doing, but maybe there's a lot of things standing in your way. Maybe one of the things standing in your way, because I can tell you there's a lot of people that come to us that want to be a real estate investor, but there's a lot of things that stand in their way. One of those big things might be the money. It might be the money just to be able to get a seat at the table to be able to do this stuff. Again, you might be able to find no money down type of investments, but they're extremely rare, extremely hard to find. And they require a lot of advanced knowledge that a beginning investor wouldn't have. So it's extremely difficult to begin investing in real estate no money down. It's actually easier once you're an experienced investor to invest with no money down than it is as a new investor. So one of the surefire ways you can be able to buy real estate, though, is banking up that money. But you need a way to be able to earn that money. And ideally, that should be something that you're using, how you're earning the money, to also gain knowledge of how you can become a better real estate investor. And working with people buying and selling real estate is a great way to better understand real estate. So you got to be able to understand these numbers here. So it's not just the money, it's the knowledge piece as well. And it's not only just having the knowledge, it's also being able to implement this. It's not just watching a YouTube video online. Watching this video doesn't make you an investor. But if you take this knowledge, and maybe you dig a little bit deeper, because this isn't, if you expected to come on YouTube and in an hour figure out how to be the best investor in the world, I'm sorry. I'm not that good. I don't know if anybody's that good to make you a great real estate investor in an hour-long video on YouTube. But you're off to a good start. You're doing the right thing. It's just going to take longer probably than you imagined. And that's the case with everything. Think of anything it is that you've done that seemed like some grand big task. Most of the time, at least with myself, we underestimate what it's going to take to accomplish that task. If you're investing in real estate, you might underestimate, especially when you're new to real estate investing, you might underestimate this vacancy and collection loss. Maybe the property isn't sitting vacant 10% of the time, maybe that's 20% of the time. Let's say it's vacant 20% of the time, that's $3,000. Let's say when you ran the numbers, or maybe the rent it is that you're asking is higher than the market rent. That same sales comparison approach, you want to look at that with rents as well. So if that's $3,000 in expenses it is, then that makes our EGI now $12,000. So we've got $12,000 actually coming in, which let's say our expenses, we were also off on that as well. Let's say our expenses ended up being $6,000 rather than $3,500. Well, now we had $12,000 of EGI minus $6,000 of operating expenses, which bring our net operating income down to just $6,000. Which now at $6,000, we divide that by 12, and that's no longer $833 a month. That's now $500 a month. Which now you went from making $360 a month, now down to making what, $26 and 67 cents. So you're making now just under $30 a month as opposed to $360 a month just from those minor shifts I just made. All I changed is I just changed your operating expenses, and I changed your vacancy and collection loss and your operating expenses. We just turned those numbers up a little bit, say we underestimated them. Now, this isn't a great profit here, but that's still positive cash flow. We're still in the positive, but there's a lot tighter margin here. That's a lot different than $400 a month now at $30 a month. And that's the point of doing these numbers here. So you could run through this, run through the possible scenarios to figure out, oh, hey, what if these expenses are more than what we thought? And what if we could reduce them down lower? Because as you get good at this, you'll be able to be more efficient than the average investor, and you'll be able to lower these numbers. You'll have strategies and processes that you could implement to be able to lower that vacancy rate and be able to lower your operating expenses. So ultimately you increase your bottom line and you also force appreciation in the property that way, where you could at the end of the buy and hold strategy decide to sell that property, or maybe you just increase the value to where you refinance it, you keep the property, you keep the cash flow. But now on top of that, you also get a big chunk of change from the money that you pull out of the refinance of the property. So there's a lot of things it is you could do with real estate investing. We literally stay here all week, just all day, 24/7, talking about investing and analyzing and running numbers and going through different examples. And that's what you should be doing. If you want to become a professional at this, you need to live, eat, sleep, and breathe it. And look, again, if you don't have the money to start investing yet, if you don't have the knowledge to start investing yet, or you don't have both of those things, get a real estate license. Get a real estate license because that gives you a profession where you could learn more about real estate, where you could better understand real estate investing and also be able to bank up some money so that way when you are ready to invest, you've already gained a bunch of knowledge through experience, which is one of the most powerful teachers. I'm not going to say it's the best way to learn because it's a really terrible way to learn, because a lot of times with experience you're losing money, you're falling down, you're hurting your pride, but it is a really great way to solidify that information where you won't forget it because of that humiliation that usually follows along with failing at something. But the more knowledge it is that you get in advance, the more you increase the odds that you will not be unsuccessful, but that you will be successful. Again, especially when you start out, by helping others do this rather than doing it yourself. You're able to leverage the knowledge that other people have, implement and add some value from what it is that you could bring to the table, and then ultimately learn from them as well. So getting a real estate license, I strongly urge you, if you're not already investing in real estate, get a real estate license so you can start learning about this more, and eventually someday you could become a real estate investor as well. And real estate, again, it's a great stepping stone for that. So if you're looking to get started with this, call us 813-333-2676. The process to get a real estate license in Florida is not that difficult. You know, people will talk to you and say, oh, it's a tough exam, there's a lot of studying it is that you've got to do, and yes, those are true things. If you don't study for this exam, you're going to be in bad shape for passing this exam. Just like if you don't study these numbers, you don't study investment in real estate, you're going to have a lot higher odds that you're going to lose money. So start learning now. Even if that is just through a real estate license, even though that's not investing yet, you could start learning and start getting ready to become an investor. So when you do have that money, you're ready to go. Call us 813-333-2676. Check us out on Friday for State of Real Estate. That's all the time we've got for today. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you on Friday. Hey, so if you're thinking about starting a real estate career, it could feel a little overwhelming sometimes. Look, that's completely understandable. That's why we're here to help. If you haven't already, check out our Success Center, tampaschool.com/success, or if you don't even know where to begin, give us a call. We'd love to help you out. We've got advisors standing by to answer any questions you have and assist you in any way it is that we can. Our phone number is 813-928-0106. Again, that's 813-928-0106. Give us a call. We're the Tampa School of Real Estate.
Do you want a career that allows you to be in control? With a career in real estate, you'll get to call the shots. Whether you're looking at starting part-time or want to become the next top agent, a career in real estate makes it possible. Find out what it takes at tampaschool.com. Do you want to incorporate studying for your real estate exams into your busy schedule? Now you can review the key topics you need to know to pass your class and state exams with our MP3 audio review. Simply pop in your headphones or connect to your car to reinforce crucial information while you exercise or drive. Listen to the first unit for free at mp3audioreview.com. That's mp3audioreview.com.
Are you thinking about a career in real estate? Hey, I'm John Charisma with the Tampa School of Real Estate, and we've helped thousands of people just like you obtain their real estate license. If you're thinking about a career in real estate, give us a call. The phone number is 813-928-0106. Our advisors are standing by to answer any questions you have and assist you in any way they can. Hey, if you're enjoying the show today, which I'm sure you are, be sure to hit like, subscribe, post your comments, share with your friends and family. Thank you guys so much for watching. you.